Som sagt, jättekul att ni är här och nu tror jag att vi börjar programmet. Valeria, can I please introduce you to your presentation? Yeah. Valeria Croce is a business intelligence analyst currently working for the European Commission. She has also been working with UNWTO and ETC. And I think that Valeria will introduce herself more in detail and present some interesting issues, points, experiences, and perhaps examples. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Very warm good afternoon also from my side. Let me tell you, I'm really excited to be here with you today, and I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. Thank you so much, and also for the great organization. Thank you for everything you have done so far for me. I'm really excited since they contacted me and told me about the topic of this conference. I really was looking forward to coming here because I really like the topic, and I really think this is a very much needed conference at this moment. Just a bit of background about myself. Indeed, also to explain this excitement, I am a business analyst. I've been doing this job for the past 15 years, and I nearly spent all this time working in analyzing tourism at international level. I worked for a university for some years in Switzerland and Austria, and then I joined the UNWTO program on market trends and statistics for another couple of years, and then moved to the European Travel Commission as head of research and development. And now I was asked by the Commission to work with them on the development of the Virtual Tourism Observatory, an online platform to share information and statistics. So a bit of an international and a European view on data. And I think that conferences like these are very much needed in this moment in our sector, because we are living through a digital transformation which is all around us. And this transformation is happening very, very quickly. And quickly we have to react if we want to grant tourism what I can call a sort of digital premium. That is the, let's say, the extra performance that the sectors that embrace quickly the digital transformation are already showing to have. So it's important to grab what's happening around us. If you think back 15, 20 years, which is not a tremendous amount of time, and if you think of the digital footprint we left behind back then, well, if you still remember, that was very much limited to financial transactions, credit card transactions, purchases, bills. And if you think of our digital footprints today, well, we can think they span really over a broad range of activities. So this change is really happening swiftly. And I'm very pleased to be here today to discuss with you what this means in terms of opportunities and challenges for our sector. And I really, really look forward to the discussions that will follow today, which I hope I will be able to follow. My knowledge of Scandinavian languages is limited, but I trust I will grab some inputs, and I really look forward to the conversations and the questions that might follow to my presentation. So let's start with the first things first. So let's start turning off. Let's see, no, this I'm going back. The green, yeah, I tried one, but it doesn't seem, sorry, here. Of course, the most obvious one, sorry. So let's start, first things first. Let's start defining what is this major force which is driving change, digitalization. Well, digitalization per se is quite a simple concept. It can be defined as the adoption or increasing adoption in computer technology. Well, quite easy. What makes a revolution out of this phenomenon is, I think, three characteristics. Its pervasiveness. Digitalization is really affecting all aspects of our lives. It started with communications, letters became emails, text messages, social network messages. Then it spread over media. Our books, paper books, have become e-books. Our TV is a digital TV. And now it spreads over manufacturing. Our cars are equipped with sensors. Our firms are equipped with sensors that are connected one another. And it will soon come in our houses with smart meters and intelligent technologies in the Internet of Things. So digitalization is all around us. And it has become a sort of minimum common denominator, I would say, of our lives. It has become a sort of common unit that brings to the second characteristic of this revolution. It is integrated. For the first time, we can connect aspects which were previously like silos. And this, for us analysts, it really opens up to a broad new range of opportunities to understand the world that surrounds us and to understand our sector, tourism. And there is another characteristic that making a revolution out of digitalization. And this is the rapid change which is happening. I think you might be familiar with the situation which is portrayed in this picture, with your parents and your children being as technologically savvy as you are. This is to say that the new technologies, especially mobile technologies, have been embraced enthusiastically, I would say, by all generations. And this has speeded up the adoption, the spread of digitalization very, very much, I would say. So the impact of this revolution is going to be ubiquitous, is going to be deep, and it's going to last for a long, long time. There are quite a few economists have already announced that we are at the dawn of a fourth industrial revolution. This was a huge topic of discussion at the World Economic Forum, which ended last week. So what they want to tell us with this is that the impact of digital technology is going to be as disruptive as it was the invention of the steam engine at the end of the 19th century. What they want to tell us with this is that the world will be a much different place in 50 years from now because of this revolution. And since we are at the beginning of this change, there are many things many innovations that we are witnessing today that are going to phase out and disappear, but some of them will remain and they will become mainstream. And it's very important to try to understand which are the factors, which are the innovations that are more lasting longer, to understand how the future will look like in 50 years. I don't have a crystal ball, never had one, so I don't know how the future will look like really, but I try to identify 4 areas in the tourism sector where digitalization is bringing changes, which I think are going to stay for quite some time. The first area is marketing, and that's quite an easy goal, because tourism has been an early adopter of digital technologies in marketing, and well, it still is, and this trend is going to continue. I put on this timeline a sort of evolution of e-marketing tactics and strategies that was developed according to the new technologies, to show that indeed, if you remember, before the turning of the millennium, many destinations and service providers in tourism had a web portal, B2C as a B2C communication tool. They had e-commerce channels. And as new technologies came in, tourism destinations and businesses embraced these technologies and included them in their tactics. The digital content platforms, videos, photos, the social media marketing, and now with the geo-targeting technologies, the real-time marketing messages that can hit a visitor as soon as he comes or she comes at your destination. So these are all practices which are quite well established in the sector, and some destinations are already exploring the opportunities offered by virtual reality destinations and businesses as well. So this is certainly a sector where digital innovation will continue to produce impacts, but these impacts will spread more deeply over the tourism value chain. And another area I think will be very much affected is product development. You might have heard of new product innovation in tourism. I just mentioned virtual reality. That's an area of true innovation, of breakout technology. But the fact is that even traditional products are not going to survive in the digital era. And here I put on purpose two of the most classic of the tourism sector, the guided tour and the resort. And here you have, for instance, the example of Michigan. This is a nice guy who is touring Michigan, and these guided tours are broadcasted live on the Michigan Tourism Board website. And visitors can interact with this nice guy through their social media channels, through a chat, as if they were taking part of the tour really. And the idea is that these guys sitting maybe in China or in Europe will be then triggered to see the Michigan from real. And on the left side, you see instead the latest Thomas Cook resort, the Sun Connect. This is a typical resort in targeting families with a plus, which is not only the typical Wi-Fi access all over the resort or touch screens in the rooms, but it offers guests a platform through which guests can connect with the staff. For instance, they can order a cocktail while laying near the pool. And it also offers guests the opportunity to interact with each other, like a social media for guests only. So it offers a plus to an experience, a holiday experience in a resort, a digital flair of the holiday. And I think this kind of innovation indeed is going to last, and all the analog tourism products are going to integrate technology to stay on the market. Another area where technology is bringing a disruptive impact is certainly management. And in this area, tourism is at the forefront as the first example of new business models in the share economy came out from tourism. And if you're thinking in this moment of Airbnb and Uber, you're thinking right. That's what I'm referring to. The share economy, or a collective economy, this is the official name used at the Commission, which is also more appropriate, is a model which is emerging very quickly, in which people use assets instead of owning them, and in which people share services instead of purchasing them. And this is a big change, not only in the way we do business, but especially in society. And that's why I choose this picture to sort of bring the message to you. This picture shows assets which were usually, let me say, symbols of our economic status. A house, a car, a dog, a luxury bag. These were ways, belongings we wanted to have to express our economic status. But the society is changing. And people, and especially the new generations, the millennials, they are not expressing through the same channels. They assert themselves in different ways through their experiences. They're not interested in owning things. And that's why they give value to a house, a car, even a dog, according to the picture, for the time they use it. So ownership is no longer important. It is the use. And that's why the share economy, these new business models, are definitely here to stay. This is quite a big issue in the tourism sector because of the threat felt by more traditional forms of accommodation businesses. And I really think that we can draw a parallel between these new business models and the revolution that, let's say revolution, we had in the 1995s with the low-cost carriers. Back then also there was a new type of doing business in the airline sector that was felt like a threat by the full service carriers. And back then, if you remember, what happened afterwards, full service carriers adopted the business model, and some of them were even very much successful in this segment. And I think that given the fact that new business models are not an innovation from the supply side, they are a demand-driven innovation because people just change the way they consume. And so we have to embrace this change. The sector has to embrace this change. And I really think there are a host of opportunities also for traditional sectors to take advantage of this change. and very many. So this is certainly another area, business models and management, where digitalization is going to bring disruptive changes. And then we come to the main topic of our conference, big data. This is the fourth area where digital innovation is going to bring a change that is going to last long. Big data is interesting for any sector of the economy, of course, but I think it's particularly interesting for tourism, as this is a compound sector with a long value chain and a very fragmented demand. So we need really a host of indicators to monitor the sector. And big data are offering the opportunity to collect, to analyze more aspects of tourism with pros and cons. Well, I guess you're all familiar with what big data is. So the term refers to the large amount of information that we can have available, mostly also thanks to this digital footprint I mentioned before that has now spans over so many activities. So this volume of data can be used to achieve more information about the sector of interest, in this case, tourism. But there is some considerations need to be done when using big data. And I here put 4 aspects which I think are relevant to consider, not to compare correctly data we used to, the information we used to create with the traditional survey methods and the information we can have with big data. One element is the cost, and in this case, big data is definitely a big advantage. Big data collection is typically automated. This information, this digital information, is produced anyways, not on purpose, and this lowers cost dramatically. So big data is not just nice to have, it's in a sort that we should explore the opportunity offered, because this is a way to manage our budgets efficiently. On the other hand, another aspect that we need to consider is that of the population. And again, big data has a bit of an advantage compared to survey methods, because usually when we have data about a population, we cover the whole population. With survey data, you are probably familiar with, we need to sample part of the population and infer that what we survey within the sample stands for the whole population. A reverse aspect of big data is that the population is dictated by the source of information. So we will not monitor the whole population of Sweden, for instance, but the whole population of bloggers on a certain website, or the whole the whole population on Facebook. So the definition of population is dictated by the data set that we are using. And this applies also for the third the third element I put here, the type of data we collect. And this is a big change in analysis. With traditional methods, usually we build our theoretical framework, we build our hypothesis, and then we go into data collection. And the data we get is exactly what we need to answer our questions. With big data is another way of working. We look at the existent and we try to see which questions could be answered by the data set. And if you allow me a nerdy joke, when I was a PhD student, we called it phishing and it was prohibited. Now we call it data science and it's okay. So, but anyways, that's the new mindset which is required by researchers. We need to investigate the data set, and this relates also to the fourth element, and see which correlations appear from the data. And then we try to make sense out of it, which means also we move from relationships which are not causal relationships. Again, going back to our traditional way, we test hypotheses, we see what causes what. No, now we see what moves together and try to make some guesses out of it. And this is a very important point, because, and this is what makes big data at this stage a complement to traditional survey methods and not yet a substitute. Because we always need some more validity of the information we can monitor through big data. And when we have it, then we can use these very timely and spread indicators to to make some assertions, but definitely we still need to go back to some more traditional methods to have strong validation, let's say, of the data we have. So, bearing this in mind, as I said, the potential of big data is huge. And it's also something we need to carry along and to investigate more, because it's offering the opportunity of monitoring many, many more indicators than we could do with traditional methods, and it's much less expensive. And that's the line taken by Eurostat, and what I show you here is the number, let's say, the tree of the potential sources that the European Statistics Office is investigating as complements or alternatives to official statistics at European level. So this is for statistics in general, and those you see circled are those of interest for the tourism sector. What I wanted to tell you also with this is that Eurostat has, in its current program of work, 2013-2017, has set the objective of starting introducing some of this data into their official production of statistics. So they want to embrace big data by the end of next year. And that there's many other programs from the Commission that would also facilitate this adoption. I mentioned, for instance, the digital single market strategy that foresees one of the pillars is the data harmonization, the big data harmonization, I could say, so that we can possibly forget about problems we have in tourism of harmonizing data and comparing statistics cross-border. With big data, the idea is to try to set the homologation already since the beginning so that we can fully exploit this data source. I want to illustrate to you these 5 sources. I'll be a bit quick, I can't go in detail, but there are references in the presentation of all the documents published by Eurostat for those who are interested to more details. The first source, and definitely the most well-known and also the most promising, is mobile positioning data. Eurostat started analyzing this source 4 years ago. There was a pilot project, a feasibility study, which started in 2012, and there is a full report available on their website. And the results were encouraging, so encouraging that new pilot projects have been launched from this year until 2019, together with national statistic offices. The key findings of the feasibility study, as I said, were encouraging. Well, the main result is that there is a fairly good consistency between mobile positioning data and the number of trips and the number of overnights. So they compared the two statistics and they talk very well to each other. And the advantage of this source of data is that it has a better coverage. Information can go down, can be nailed down to the level of the hotel, which in some countries is not possible, and especially at European level is definitely not possible at this stage. And it also offers much more detailed information on the background. Again, we can have the exact location of departure of the visitor, of the guest, instead of the nationality or the country of origin. And the advantage typical of all big data sources, it offers near real-time indicators. On the other side, there are some, the biggest barriers in the adoption of this data source are regulations, limitations in regulations. Mobile positioning data are not available across all European countries, the opposite, only in few. There are also some methodological issues like overcoverage, people having 2, 3 mobile devices, they are counted 2, 3 times. And if Eurostat would substitute the traditional surveys with this source of data, then we will lose some information, some details on, for instance, the purpose of the trip or the quality of the accommodation chosen. Another source of information of big data which is probably also familiar to many of you, is the use of social media for the analysis of tourism. With this, I refer again to the digital footprint I mentioned before, so all the traces that we leave along when we do web searches, purchases, and so on. As I mentioned, just 15, 20 years ago, the only digital input available when we did a purchase, if we did it online or with a debit credit card, was indeed the act of the purchase. Now, with social media and with the digitalization of our lives, we can trace back much of the decision-making process that brought us to that purchase, like a travel decision, and we can also follow up with reviews and comments, etc. So digitalization has really expanded our capability to follow visitors all along their decision-making process and consumption behavior. As all big data methods, there are pros and cons. The advantages of using this digital footprint are the fact that we can have a deeper insight into the tourist behavior. It's a non-intrusive observation, so people are not in a focus group or are not answering a questionnaire. So they really behave normal. And it's near real-time observation, and it's automated data collection, which lowers cost, which is of all big data sources. On the other side, again, what information available on blogs, on social media, is not directed, as in a focus group, for instance, but we have to work with what is commented, what is discussed by for instance, tourists on review sites. So it's limited to what is available. And there is also a possible higher impact of social desirability. People they are behaving normally, but they might show off on websites. So this is also something that needs to be factored in. And it's difficult to generalize because we look at a population on social media, on a travel blog, and we are not looking at all the visitors in our destination. Anyways, there are quite a number of interesting uses of this digital footprint, and I wanted to bring you an example. I had the luck of working both with UNWTO and ETC on ethnographic studies, studies that use this methodology in ethnography, and I found them very, very interesting. I just wanted to give you a bit of just an illustration of the results that can be achieved with this methodology. Ethnography, as the name suggests, is the study of the population in their virtual environment of the netizens. And through this study, through the combination of a quantitative data collection of posts and blogs, and the qualitative analysis of this content, it is possible to have quite a good analysis of tribes. And ethnography is like ethnography, so it studies the tribes that live on the internet. And in this case, for instance, we analyzed the Chinese blogosphere, so travel blogs in China, and we could identify 5 tribes of travelers from China to Europe and have a very detailed description of what their decision-making process is and what their behavior is. Another use we made of ethnography was to sort of picture the, let's say, online brand positioning of a country. This is the example of Sweden. And, well, it's not, of course, a full portrait of what is Sweden as a tourism brand, but it just returns the volume of searches, the cities where these searches were made, the keywords associated with the searches. So it gives some hints, at least, maybe to provide information on the further research with traditional methods on, for instance, brand positioning. And I see, whenever I show the country where the presentation takes place, that really stimulates some criticism and comments. You can have a look at this later, and I'm eager to know if you see things which are real or not. So another source of big data Eurostat is looking into is web searches. Again, if I mention Google Trends, I guess you're all familiar with this tool, which is provided by Google, to analyze all the searches that have been made on the search engine. Here, for instance, I filter by Malmo, just to show the opportunities it offers. You can select keywords, you can select the year where the searches were made, and see, for instance, as in this slide, which other words were associated with the searches. Just bear in mind if you use Google Trends to log out, because if you stay logged in Google, if you have an account, then they will tailor the results according to your previous searches. That's something I learned recently, so always do log out. And they are clever. And so this is one way to use it. Here, for instance, you can, in Google Trends, you can also see from where these searches come. But this is a method that can be used also in your website, and this also leads, in my view, to more detailed and more meaningful results. If you analyze what was looked at through the search function of your website, and you can have a very good profile of what people look at when they are surfing your website or looking for information about your products or destinations. As a source of data for official statistics, well, again, some reasoning needs to be done. Web searches are certainly an interesting indicator of interest, which is quite difficult to monitor, to study, to investigate with traditional methods. But interest doesn't mean behavior. There are quite a lot of studies now proving that in tourism, at least, web searches explain future behavior, so they can be used to predict demand. But still, the concepts are slightly different. And interest doesn't mean immediately tourism. We have seen this for Malmo, which was associated also with trains, transport. So if they're looking for your destination, doesn't mean necessarily they are looking for a tourism experience at your destination. But still, this kind of analysis, again, analyzed in the right way, can also bring more breakdowns on the activities, on the attractions of the place visited. And that could be an enrichment to official statistics. There are some examples I pointed here. For those who are interested to learn more, the Statistic Office of the UK is already using Google Trends search in the analysis in official statistics. And Eurostat published a small report on the topic. So really listing all the advantages and disadvantages and existing studies. A fourth methodology, again, which is in Eurostat radar, is web scraping. And let me tell you, that's my favorite. Web scraping is a computer software technique that extracts information from websites. If you have ever visited a price comparing website, that's the technology behind. So this algorithm just visits websites or introduce keywords to run some functions on a website and collects the information. Put it on a, and then this information can be elaborated. And here I brought an example from Inside Airbnb, which is a website completely not linked with Airbnb. And to what they claim is also not linked to any lobby from the accommodation sector. This website crawls Airbnb website and returns indicators to make some analysis. I put here the example of Brussels because I'm familiar with the city, but there are quite a few other cities listed. For instance, through this crawler, we can learn that in Brussels there are nearly 5,000 how do you call them? It's not accommodation, it's properties listed on Airbnb. And we can also learn that 2/3 of these properties are full houses, not just a room in a house or an apartment. It's the full apartment or the full house. And the average rate per night is 73 euro. We can also learn that every property is on average available for 83, is used for 83 nights per year, but that 81% of all the properties are available all year round. So a bit different from the concept of Airbnb to just rent out your house whenever you are on holiday yourself. Because like 81% of these properties is available for, as I said, nearly the whole year. And we can also learn that 35% of the hosts have multiple properties listed on Airbnb. So besides the results we can have on how Airbnb offering is in Brussels, for me it's really stunning to see how much information can be collected automatically with no human intervention. That's at least what they claim on the website, that this is all automated. And there are really a lot of indicators that can help us dig down, understand much better this phenomenon, and think of it like, for instance, scrapping data from, again, a travel blogger site about the demographics of the users, the destinations they visit, their booking preferences. So this technology could be used in many other ways to create interesting indicators. So that's, I think it's a very promising methodology. And the fifth one, again, in the radar of Eurostat, is the traces we leave behind when we book flights. There are quite a few private companies already doing this. The picture you see here comes from Forward Keys, but also Amadeus and other IT companies that develop reservation systems are now offering the analysis of this booking behavior. Air bookings are very interesting. The DG Transport has an eye on it, and Eurostat is looking at these indicators for mainly for the transportation statistics. For tourism, they are quite interesting, especially for small destinations, for island destinations, which wouldn't be so much covered otherwise, and where air transport is very relevant. But for the whole of Europe, that's a bit less interesting, because car and so travel by surface is, over surface, sorry, is really still the dominant means of transport. So this is a nice indicator, but probably more for transportation statistics than for tourism. So this is just to wrap up more or less what we can expect in the next 2 years to happen in Eurostat. They will try to adopt some, depending on the results of the feasibility studies, of course, and of the pilot projects. There might be the adoption of some of these new big data sources into these three main areas of tourism statistics: accommodation statistics, and the flow of tourists, and expenditure. And not to extend too much, not to talk too much, I also want to listen from you now. Here I just put some thoughts and some a quick wrap-up of the things said so far, which I hope will be useful for your later discussions. So in my view, there is no doubt that digitalization is bringing unprecedented opportunities for tourism. And we have seen the areas, new business models, new markets can be reached easily, product innovation, and big data is one of these opportunities digitalization bring. But we also have to bear in mind that the pace, it's a very fast revolution, but it's not an equal revolution. There are still, especially the SMEs, still face strong barriers to switch to digital or fully digital. Maybe they all have internet, they all have e-commerce, but cloud computing, social media, there are many other opportunities they are not maybe capable to grab, to understand, to vision. So there is much work needs still to be done to help all businesses, including the small ones, to really capitalize on this opportunity. This digitalization is bringing opportunities, but also is increasing dramatically uncertainty and complexity. At the same time, it's also helping us to deal with this. So complexity is becoming the new normal. And But this also means that we are working with more and more and more data, and not all data is significant. And we have to train ourselves to really learn how to detect the signal from the noise, so not to follow the noise and the wrong information, and always try to, and this is something maybe new to old school researchers as I am, analog researchers. So we really need to be able to distinguish within all this information which is the relevant one. And this links to the next step. We really need a new mindset. As I said before, the new sources of data, they require us to look at them and try to understand what they want to tell us, rather than putting the questions first and trying to answer them. This is a completely new mindset, and we also need completely new skills to do that. The work which could be done by an analog researcher before now requires 2 highly specialized figures. The outcome is maybe 3 times higher, but we need data scientists and we need analysts, and they don't do the same work. Data scientists dig into the data, analysts are capable to make useful insights. While previously, at least that's my experience, researchers could do both things, could set up a research design and also do the report. Now I think we're going through a specialization also in terms of skills, which means we need to educate future researchers in one way or the other, and also to be able to work closely together. One thing that is important, and that's, I think, the last 2 points are really the 2 challenges that we have to bear in mind. Big data is big opportunities, but we always have to have quality as the yardstick we want to achieve. Because it's easy to, indeed, maybe get a bit more lazy in this respect with the full amount of data we have. But quality and trust of the sources must remain our key element we never have to forget. And then we also have not to ignore possible game changers. Legislation and privacy issues, this is all in the making. There is a huge work done by the Commission, but also by states in this respect, because the phenomenon is so new that legislators are trying to define the rules of the game, which are not yet clear. And these rules can dramatically change the availability of big data. You might invest in a big data source which might be illegal in the next future. So these game changers are certainly something to also keep in mind in the evaluations and the discussions that you experts are going to make over the next today and then tomorrow. And with this, I very much thank you for your kind attention, and if you have any question, if we still have some time, I would be happy to take them.
We do have time, and I think we even have a microphone, so if you're open to any question, please.
We just need the questions now.
Yeah, exactly. We have a few over here. Do we have microphones? Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Linda, and I'm a student in sustainable business development within tourism. And I was thinking, who would you say is the main user today of analyzing big data?
The main user?
Yeah.
In tourism, actual user, I would say large companies. They certainly have the mentality, the capability, and they are making profit already out of it. I would say this. I think my experience also, destinations are getting quite familiar, but they might not have the capacity to have a full access. And I know small businesses are lagging behind.
Yeah, because I'm thinking this is an amazing tool, and I know for sure but this is also, as you said, very complex. And in Skåne, in this area, there are a lot of small producers of products, services, and but yeah, it would be interesting to see how they could get hold and to use these kind of tools to actually find new markets and grow in a...
Yeah, the private sector, I think, is already tapping this potential. Consultancies are already selling analytics and their support to businesses, indeed, in this respect. But I really think it's a much more democratic tool, that even small businesses can have their own big data access, but definitely we need to work more to empower them and to grant them access. Cloud computing, I think, will help a lot, because they don't need to know about IT. It's all managed remotely. And so these kind of services that can be, you know, just plug in and get your big data, they will help a lot. And I think the sector is going in this direction. There will be an intermediation, let's say, but this will help spreading. But also education, training are definitely needed to spread it further.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had another question also over here, I think. Just pass the microphone on.
Yeah, hello, my name is Peter. I'm doing the same studies in Linder. My question is, you were talking about the location-based data generated by mobile phones. My question is, how do you get this data? I mean, legally, there's not so many possibilities, or do you collect them by the users who voluntarily give them and saying, I checked in the airport in Zurich or whatever?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. No, there are a few countries, namely the Baltic countries, where this data is publicly available. And most of the pilot, at least the pilot study run by Eurostat, has been done with this data. In Belgium, also Tourism Flanders has worked with the local mobile company, the biggest one, to work on their data. So in some countries, this is either legal or there have been like agreements for the specific purpose. But legislation is a big issue. So now the attempt is to demonstrate on a case basis that this is valuable. And then the next step will be to try to find an agreement if this data can be used on a broader scope.
Thank you. Interesting questions. We have more questions up here, first row.
Hello, Valeria.
Hello.
My name is Ocean. I think we met before.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you, yeah. Yeah, I have a question for you. When it comes to big data, now, the more interesting the data, the more costly the data normally. And as you say, you have special interest firms, consultancies that actually do business in this field. What do you think about the role of national governments or local or regional governments when it comes to buy big data, I mean the raw data, and hand it out to all the SMEs all over the place, more or less, set them loose to do business and to drive whatever growth there is. Do you think that those governments, the public governments, that they have a role in sort of getting this growth to happen? Because that's sort of what I believe, that the big data must come for free to the businesses. Then you can release a lot of power.
That's a very interesting question, thank you. Well, first, I think that interesting data is not necessarily costly. Some of them are for free. And this was the case more in the analog data sources. I think now we can really have interesting data for free. And I think Airbnb Insight, for instance, is an example. But still, some of them are proprietary data, and so they come with a price. I think that, and this is really my personal opinion, I think we are in a lucky situation that the position of the Commission is towards open data. I've been at a conference with also representatives from the US, where the attitude is much more on competition and on proprietary data. So the first who comes can own the data and sell them. In Europe, we are more leaning towards open data, and there is a huge work done at just started by the DG Communication to establish rules that allow businesses to grow, but also allow the free circulation of data. And data purchased by a country from a European viewpoint is a bit a limitation. That should be at least a European effort to do that, and that's, of course, the vision from Brussels. That could be an option, but I really think that open data would be the best of the futures.
And the American companies?
The American companies pay taxes in Europe, but that's already something which was achieved. No, that's the two different visions of the economy we have. What I have seen so far is that there is no, leaning back from the Commission, so we might live in two different economic environments, data-wise. But yeah, if the most interesting data come from American companies, they will be for sale, I would guess.
More questions? Only on this side. What happened here? I'm sure you have questions. I have a question, Valeria.
Please.
And I think first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. It was fantastically interesting.
Thank you.
And by the looks of it, we all have work to do and many tools to learn. And I was specifically interested about your explanation of how you need different skills and how specialization is important. But I have a question about whether we learn all these things and we can see the pros, we can see the cons, and we can work with it. But can you see other types of effects? For instance, Jens this morning was saying that, okay, we also need to support coordination and collaboration in the industry. Can somehow going along this trend and learning all these things and picking up on the positive sides of it, can that create other types of effect for the tourism industry?
I think that it's a very interesting question as well, which would need me to sit down, take some notes, and then give you an answer. So I will just, say thoughts as they pop up in my mind. I think that the more we know, the more we are able to achieve a common view. So I think that much of the collaboration processes have been really taking place. We're through sitting together, sharing experiences, and then realizing that we are all looking in the same direction. So certainly these technologies will help a lot to gain a clearer vision of things, probably a common vision, as these data are borderless. That's another big characteristic of big data. They typically are cross-border. Blogs don't have a nationality. We had this problem a lot doing ethnographic studies because we started saying, okay, let's analyze China, but wait, you cannot put borders. Well, in China, yes, wrong example. Russia. Okay, you cannot put borders to blogs. So it's a Russian-speaking environment, but a Russian-speaking person could be in the US. So it's really borderless. So I think that, coming to your question, we will share more similar information, and this will very much help collaboration.
Thank you, absolutely. Will it perhaps also make us more curious? Because the more we know, the more we want to know. So it's a kind of endless wheel. We learn a few things on an aggregated level and we form new questions. So to me, it seems like a glorious future for everybody interested in statistics analysis and certainly in research.
Absolutely. I think it's our time. And I tell you, the first time, I think 5 years ago, I don't remember in which airport, watching a billboard saying, I don't remember, like analytics, whatever, advertising analytics. And I said, I can't believe it. Analytics is so sexy. It's a billboard, an advertisement in the airport. So it's our time for an analyst and statistics. We can get out of our libraries. And
it's the revenge of the nerds.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Feel free, we have time. So you don't need to be, you might just want to bring something up. It might not even be a question. Maybe you want to state something. That's okay too.
How safe is Brussels today? Things like that. Thank you very much for your attention and your questions.
Thank you, Valeria. And to make sure that you leave Sweden and that you leave Skåne with a great memory, this is a small gift that will give you the possibility to cook for your family with the tastes of Drakamöllan in Skåne. And I think this book will provide you with some great happenings.
I see. Oh, it's analog. It's paper book.
Yes.
Thank you. I still like them. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.